In the year 2014, a woman named Elizabeth Holmes was standing on the precipice of legend. She was barely 30 years old, yet she was being hailed as the next Steve Jobs. Her company, Theranos, was valued at an astronomical $9 billion, and she was a self-made billionaire, the youngest woman ever to earn that title. Her vision was elegant, simple, and utterly revolutionary. A small, beautiful device called the Edison that could run hundreds of sophisticated medical tests, from cholesterol levels to cancer markers, using just a single drop of blood from a finger prick. No more painful vials, no more long waits. Healthcare democratized. But here is the business story you need to understand. Elizabeth Holmes was not a genius inventor. She was a master storyteller. And the $9 billion valuation was built not on scientific breakthrough, but on a vast, elaborate lie. This is the complete story of the Theranos scam, the unprecedented Silicon Valley fraud that fooled global leaders, stole billions from investors, and endangered thousands of patient lives. To understand the collapse, we have to go back to the beginning. In 2003, at the age of 19, Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford to found her company. Her initial idea was a smart patch that could adjust drug dosages, but she quickly pivoted. The new concept was the finger prick testing device. The problem? Scientifically, it was almost impossible. A single drop of capillary blood from a finger contains different properties than venous blood from a vein, making it extremely difficult to get accurate results for a wide range of tests. But Holmes didn't let science get in the way of her narrative. She modeled her entire persona and business strategy after Steve Jobs: the minimalist black turtleneck, the deep, resonant voice, and an almost fanatical obsession with secrecy. Elizabeth was a prodigy at fundraising. She targeted high-profile, influential figures who lacked a background in medicine, making them more susceptible to her grand vision. Her board of directors was stacked with political heavyweights, former secretaries of state like George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, and former defense secretaries. These figures lent Theranos a massive aura of credibility, which was unfortunately enough for many global venture capitalists and private investors. Crucially, she secured hundreds of millions of dollars from sophisticated, globally minded investors like Rupert Murdoch, an Australian media mogul with vast UK and US holdings, and the Cox family. They weren't investing in data. They were investing in the story and the perceived validation of the famous board members. And what was happening inside the company? Chaos. The Edison machine simply did not work. Former employees later testified that the device failed quality control tests constantly. They couldn't get the required volume of blood from a finger prick to run accurate, repeatable tests. But Theranos had a solution, and it was the core of the fraud. They were secretly using commercial, off-the-shelf testing machines from companies like Siemens. They would dilute the small finger prick blood samples to run them on these large machines, a process that rendered the results unreliable and dangerous. The great innovation was nothing more than a front, a deception worthy of a Hollywood script. The real financial turning point came in 2013, when Theranos signed a massive deal with Walgreens, one of America's largest pharmacy chains, to install its wellness centers in thousands of their stores across the country. This was the validation Holmes needed. Walgreens was putting the company's revolutionary technology directly in front of the American public. The valuation soared to its peak of $9 billion. Theranos was no longer a secret Silicon Valley darling. It was a functioning, public-facing healthcare service. The problem was that the tests conducted in those centers were often wildly inaccurate. Imagine a diabetic receiving an incorrect blood sugar reading, or a cancer patient being told they're clear when they aren't. This wasn't just financial fraud, it was potentially lethal healthcare malpractice. Inside Theranos, the company was run with an unprecedented level of paranoia and control, largely dictated by Elizabeth Holmes and her secret partner, Sunny Balwani, the company's COO. Balwani was known for his aggressive, bullying tactics, and anyone who questioned the technology was immediately fired, silenced, or threatened with legal action. They used non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, as a weapon to maintain total secrecy. This corporate culture of fear is a textbook example of poor governance, something investors in the City of London or Wall Street should pay close attention to. The financial world, the media, and even politicians were completely enthralled. The hype machine was in overdrive, fueled by the narrative of a world-changing female founder. The story itself became a powerful shield against scrutiny. But the shield was about to crack. Every great financial scandal has a hero, and in the case of Theranos, that was John Carreyrou, an investigative reporter for the Wall Street Journal. In 2015, Carreyrou began getting calls from concerned former employees. Two were critical: Erica Chung and Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz. They risked everything: their careers, their financial stability, and facing the wrath of Theranos' army of lawyers to expose the truth. Chung and Schultz confirmed the scale of the deception, the secret use of commercial machines, the rampant inaccuracy, and the culture of fear. On October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published Carreyrou's first explosive article. A prized Silicon Valley startup has struggled with its technology. The article triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. Regulatory scrutiny. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, began an aggressive investigation, finding that the practices at the Theranos lab posed immediate jeopardy to patient health and safety. The deal's collapse. Walgreens immediately suspended its partnership. The valuation evaporates. The $9 billion valuation was revealed to be a phantom. Investors, initially fooled by the celebrity board and the charisma of Holmes, now demanded answers. Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani fought back with ferocity, denying every allegation and threatening lawsuits. But the financial and regulatory damage was terminal. In 2018, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, the main U.S. financial regulator, charged Theranos and Holmes with massive fraud, alleging that they had engaged in an elaborate, years-long fraud. The story of Theranos transformed from a business fairy tale into a legal and financial nightmare. In 2018, Theranos officially ceased operations, shuttering its labs and selling off all its assets. The $9 billion dream officially ended with a value of zero. Investors, including Rupert Murdoch, who had sunk over $125 million into the company, lost almost everything. The real cost, however, was borne by the thousands of patients who received faulty test results. The Department of Justice filed criminal fraud charges against both Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani. The central argument was clear: they knowingly misrepresented the technology to extract money from investors, knowing it put patient safety at risk. The subsequent trials were a media spectacle, focusing heavily on the psychology of a startup CEO and the infamous "fake it till you make it" culture of Silicon Valley. Holmes argued that she truly believed in the technology and was trying to save the company, not defraud investors. In 2022, the verdicts came down. Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. She was sentenced to over 11 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $452 million in restitution to the victims of the fraud. Sunny Balwani was also found guilty on all 12 counts of fraud and conspiracy and received a sentence of nearly 13 years. The message from the U.S. legal system was clear. Corporate fraud, particularly when it endangers public health, will be met with severe consequences. The Theranos saga is more than a true crime financial story. It's a terrifying, essential lesson for anyone in business, finance, or investing, whether you're in London, New York, or anywhere in between. What can we learn? The danger of charisma over competence. Investors were seduced by the narrative and the personality of Elizabeth Holmes. They forgot the most basic rule of investing: due diligence. They didn't ask the tough questions. They didn't consult scientific experts. And they let a celebrity board cloud their judgment. This is a failure of corporate governance that happens globally. The power of narrative. Holmes understood that in the high-stakes world of venture capital, sometimes the story is worth more than the product. She used the promise of disruption and saving the world as a shield against the scientific reality. The value of whistleblowers. The entire house of cards collapsed because a few young people with a conscience refused to be silenced. Businesses must have a culture where employees can safely report ethical and technical failures without fear of retaliation. A critical lesson for all major corporations. The story of Theranos is a cautionary tale written in billions of lost dollars and years of criminal sentences. It reminds us that in the pursuit of revolutionary change, the single most important currency is truth. What part of the Theranos story shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more deep dives into business and finance scandals relevant to your portfolio in the US and the UK, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe.